My brother's son walked out of my son's room accidentally wearing his $1,850 Apple Vision Pro. My brother laughed. He looks better in it. Mom added, relax. Your kid can share for once. It's just a toy, not a house. I just smiled and said, then keep it. By 6 a.m., Dad was pounding on my door in the rain, barefoot and shaking. The headset was on the wrong face. That was the first thing I registered when I walked out of the bathroom at my parents' house on a Saturday afternoon in July. My nephew Jet, 13 years old, was standing in the hallway outside my son's room wearing a pair of Apple Vision Pro that did not belong to him. The matte glass and aluminum frame sat across his forehead like a crown he had appointed himself to wear. The digital display was active. The spatial cameras were tracking his hands. He was laughing and swinging his arms at something only he could see. The Vision Pro belonged to my son Eli, 12 years old. I had bought it for Eli's birthday 6 weeks earlier. $1,850. Not the kind of purchase I make without thinking. I am a data analyst. I think about every number. I calculated the cost against my savings, my monthly expenses, and the look on my son's face when he opened the box. The look won. Eli had been using it to design 3D models in an architecture app he found himself, building rooms and structures and landscapes that were better than anything a 12-year-old should be able to make. His art teacher had emailed me twice to say Eli's spatial design work was college level. That headset was not a toy. It was the tool my son used to build the things inside his head. Eli was standing in his room, 6 feet from the doorway, watching his cousin walk away wearing his birthday present. His hands were at his sides. His face was the face of a boy who has learned at 12 that protesting in this family costs more than losing. My brother Vaughn was in the living room. 33, built like someone who peaked in high school football and has been coasting on the memory of it since. He was leaning back on the couch with one arm across the cushion and the other holding a beer. When I stepped into the hallway and looked at Jet, then at Eli, then at the headset, Vaughn smiled. Not the kind of smile that means anything warm. The kind that means I am watching you discover something I already knew about and find entertaining. He looks better in it, Vaughn said. He said it loud enough for Eli to hear from the bedroom. My mother Irene was in the kitchen doorway. 59 years old, dish towel over her shoulder, the posture of a woman who has been managing the mood of a household for 30 years by always siding with whoever is loudest. She looked at me, then at Jet and said, relax, Corbin, your kid can share for once. It's just a toy, not a house. Not a house. She said that standing in a house I own. She did not know that. Nobody in the room knew that. But she said it, and the words sat in the air like a fuse that had just been lit from both ends. My father Dale was in his recliner. 62, retired auto parts store manager, reading glasses on his nose, newspaper folded to the crossword. He did not look up. He did not tell Jet to give it back. He did not say a word. His silence was the loudest endorsement in the room. I looked at my son standing in the doorway of a bedroom he was visiting, watching a 13-year-old parade around in his birthday present while the adults laughed or stayed quiet. Eli's eyes met mine. He did not ask me to do anything. He did not need to. The look was enough. It said, I know how this family works, Dad. I just wanted to know if you did too. I smiled. Not a warm smile. The kind of smile a man wears when the last wire in a very old circuit has finally burned through and the system is about to go dark. Then keep it, I said. The room shifted. Vaughn's beer stopped halfway to his mouth. Irene's hand tightened on the dish towel. Dale looked up from the crossword for the first time. Nobody expected that. They expected me to argue. They expected me to negotiate, to plead, to explain why the headset was important, to perform the role of the soft brother who values things too much and never pushes back. Instead, I gave it away. And the giving away was the thing that scared them, even if they did not know why yet. Eli, get your bag, I said. We're going home. Eli walked past Jet without looking at him, picked up his backpack from beside the front door, and followed me to the car. I did not speak to Vaughn. I did not speak to Irene or Dale. I opened the car door for my son, walked around to the driver's side, and sat behind the wheel. Before I started the engine, I reached into my pocket and took the house key off my keyring. Brass, plain steel ring, owner's copy. The key to the house my parents were sitting in. The house nobody at that table knew I owned. I set it in the center console and started the car. Halfway home, Eli said, "You told them to keep it." I did. "That was $1,850, Dad. I know exactly what it cost." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Are you going to get it back?" "No," I said. "I am going to do something better." If you have ever walked out of a room where your family treated your child like he did not matter, and you stayed quiet because you were planning instead of reacting, this is karma unfolded. Stay with me. My name is Corbin Thorne. I am 36 years old and I work as a senior data analyst at a healthcare company in Portland, Oregon. I track patterns in large data sets, build predictive models, and translate numbers into reports that tell people things they do not want to hear. I make $155,000 a year. I have a spreadsheet for everything. My mortgage, my utilities, my grocery spending by week, and a master file that nobody in my family has ever seen, labeled Thorne House Ledger. That contains every dollar I have spent on the home my parents and brother live in. In 2019, my parents were 3 months behind on their mortgage. The bank had sent 2 notices. A third would trigger foreclosure proceedings. Dale had retired early from the auto parts store after a back injury, and Irene's part-time work at a church thrift shop did not cover the gap. They did not tell me they were in trouble. I found out from a county tax lien notice that showed up in a public records search I ran while helping a colleague with a data project. The house I grew up in, the house on Fulton Street where my height marks are still on the door frame in the upstairs hallway, was 90 days from being taken. I bought it. Quietly, through a trust my attorney Quinn Osgood helped me set up. The purchase price was $185,000, paid from savings I had been building since I was 24. I paid off the remaining mortgage balance, cleared the tax lien, and took title. The trust is in my name. The deed is recorded with Multnomah County. I own the house. I did not tell my parents. I did not tell Vaughn. Quinn advised me to tell them, and I said I would, and then I did not, because I knew what would happen. They would not say thank you. They would say the house was always theirs and I was just helping with the paperwork. So I kept the deed in my filing cabinet and the key on my ring, and I let them live there as though nothing had changed. For 5 years, I paid every property tax bill, $42,000. I paid the homeowner's insurance, $18,000. I paid for the roof replacement in 2021, the furnace in 2022, the plumbing repair in 2023, and the kitchen floor in 2024. $31,000 in maintenance and repairs. Total investment, $276,000. Every payment logged in the Thorne House ledger, row by row, date by date, receipt by receipt. I charged them nothing. No rent. No utilities. Not a dollar toward the grocery bill or the water heater or the tree that fell in the backyard during the ice storm of 2022 that I paid a crew $3,200 to remove, while Dale watched from the kitchen window and said, "They're doing a good job." I covered the cost of every season that house survived because I believed, at some point, someone in that family would look at me and say, "I see what you are doing." Nobody did. Nobody looked. Nobody asked how the furnace got replaced or where the new roof came from. The house simply continued to work, the way electricity continues to flow when someone behind the wall keeps the wiring sound. Vaughn moved back in after his divorce 2 years ago. He showed up with a truck full of boxes and a story about needing a few months to get back on his feet. The few months became 2 years. He took the downstairs guest room, parked his truck in the driveway, and began referring to the house as the family place, as though it were a commune and not a mortgage-free property owned by his brother. He never asked who owned it. He never asked who paid the bills. He asked Dale how much rent was, and Dale, sitting in a recliner in a house he did not own, said, $600 a month should cover your share. Vaughn paid it. Dale pocketed it. I received nothing. Eli is my whole life. He is 12, quiet, artistic, and smarter than the test scores show, because the test scores do not measure the things he is good at. He designs 3D buildings in spatial software. He draws floor plans on graph paper. He told me once that he wants to be an architect, and I told him he already is one. He just does not have the license yet. His mother left when he was 7. She moved to Austin with a man she met online and sends a birthday card every March that arrives 2 weeks late. Eli does not talk about her. I do not bring her up. We built our world around each other, and the walls hold. Quinn Osgood is the reason I kept records. Quinn is 38, a real estate attorney who handled the trust purchase and has been my closest friend since law school orientation, when I was still pre-law before I switched to data science, the week before the Saturday incident. Quinn came to my apartment for a beer, and I mentioned that Vaughn had been calling Eli Screen Kid at family dinners. Quinn set down his glass and said, "You own the house they live in, Corbin, you pay every bill, and they mock your son at the table you paid for. When are you going to open the ledger?" I almost told him I would handle it after the summer. What stopped me was the way Quinn said, "Your son." Not Eli, your son. The possessive landed differently. It reminded me that what was happening at that table was not about a nickname. It was about a pattern of disrespect aimed at a 12-year-old boy who could not defend himself because every adult in the room had decided he did not need defending. That Saturday evening, after I drove Eli home and made him pasta with the jarred sauce he likes, because I was not in the mood to cook anything that required attention, and sat with him on the couch while he watched a movie about robots building a city, and waited until his eyes closed and his breathing slowed, and I carried him to bed the way I have carried him since he was small enough to fit. Entirely in my arms, I opened my laptop and began doing what I do best. I pulled numbers. I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water I did not drink and the house key sitting in the center console 10 feet away in the car, and I opened every spreadsheet, every bank portal, every property record I had access to. The empty chair across from me was where Eli had been sitting for dinner 90 minutes earlier, his plate still in the sink, his fork resting on top of it, a single piece of rotini stuck to the tine. The apartment was quiet the way apartments are quiet when a child is asleep and the only person awake is a man with a spreadsheet and a decision. The first number I pulled was one I was not expecting. I accessed the county property tax portal to verify my next payment date, and while I was logged in, I ran a search on any liens, claims, or rental registrations associated with the Fulton Street address. There were none in my name. But there was a rental income declaration filed by Dale Thorne with the State Revenue Department. Filed annually for 5 years. Declared rental income, $600 per month from one tenant. The tenant was listed as Vaughn Thorne. I sat with that for 30 seconds. Then I opened Vaughn's bank records. Quinn had set up a shared family financial access agreement years ago for the trust, which gave me authorized visibility into transactions involving the property address. Vaughn had been paying Dale $600 a month, every month, for 5 years. $36,000. Dale had been collecting rent from Vaughn on a house he did not own, a house I owned, a house I let them live in for free. Dale was charging his own son rent on my property and keeping every dollar. I almost called Dale right then. Midnight, rain starting outside, phone in my hand, his number on the screen. I wanted to hear him try to explain it. I wanted to hear the pause, the throat clearing, the excuse that would not hold weight. What stopped me was the spreadsheet. The Thornhouse ledger was still open on the next tab. $276,000 in neat rows. And beside it now, a new column I had just built. $36,000 in rent collected by a man who does not hold the deed. The numbers did not need a phone call. They needed an attorney. Vaughn thought he was paying rent. Dale thought nobody would check. And I was sitting at my kitchen table at 11 p.m. on a Saturday, staring at a spreadsheet that told me my father had been running a quiet scam on the son he favored using the house the son he dismissed had paid for. I almost closed the laptop and went to bed. What stopped me was the house key sitting in the center console of my car, where I had set it 4 hours earlier. The key I took off my ring when I walked out of a house where my son's birthday present was stolen, and the room laughed. That key was not going back on the ring, and the house was not going to be free anymore. I picked up my phone and called Quinn. He answered on the second ring because Quinn always answers when I call after 10 p.m. He knows I do not call late unless the numbers have told me something I cannot sit on. I need 3 things, I said. A property listing at market value, a 30-day vacate notice served to all occupants, and a police report for the Vision Pro. Quinn was quiet for a moment. The Vision Pro is a police report? Jet walked out of Eli's room wearing it. Vaughn told him to keep it. That is theft of property valued at $1,850. I have the receipt and a timestamp photo of Eli wearing it the day I gave it to him. And the house? List it tomorrow morning. Market value is $310 based on the last comp analysis I ran in April. And I want a sign in the front yard before anyone in that house wakes up. Corbin, this is your parents' home. Are you sure you want to do it this way? It is my house. They live in it because I let them. And today, in my house, my brother's kids stole from my son, and my mother told me to relax because it was just a toy and not a house. She does not know how right she was. I want them to see the sign before they hear the explanation. Quinn was quiet for 3 seconds. Then he said, I will have the listing paperwork ready by midnight. The realtor, a woman named Gillen from our firm, can post the sign tomorrow at 5:30 a.m. Sunday morning. The vacate notice goes certified first thing Monday. At 11:40 p.m., I emailed Quinn the listing authorization with my digital signature. Then I filed the police report online through Portland PD's non-emergency portal. Theft of personal property, value $1,850. Suspect, Jet Thorne, age 13, in the custody of his father, Vaughn Thorne, taken from Eli Thorne's possession at the Fulton Street address. I attached the purchase receipt, a photo of Eli wearing the headset the day I gave it to him with the metadata showing the date and GPS coordinates, and a written description of the incident. The report was received and assigned a case number by 12:30 a.m. If this story is making your chest tight, stay right here. Karma Unfolded is where the spreadsheet finally gets opened. I slept 3 hours. At 5:31 on Sunday morning, less than 14 hours after I walked out of the Fulton Street house, in a steady rain that had started before dawn and was not planning to stop, a realtor named Gillen drove to the property in a company SUV. She wore rain boots and a yellow jacket, and she worked quickly. The for sale sign went into the front lawn 14 inches from the sidewalk, exactly where it would be the first thing visible from the front bedroom window where Dale and Irene sleep. White sign, red letters, the agency logo in the corner, and the listing price printed at the bottom in numbers large enough to read from the driveway, $310,000. Gillen took a photo of the sign for the listing file, uploaded it to the MLs from her phone, and drove away. The sign stood in the rain, lit by the porch light that was still on from the night before, water running down the letters. It looked permanent. It was. Dale Thorne saw it at 5:48. Quinn pieced the timeline together later from the realtor's posting timestamp and the time of Dale's first call to my phone. 5:51 a.m. I did not answer. 5:53, 5:55, 5:57, 4 calls in 6 minutes. Then 3 minutes of silence during which, Quinn believes, Dale was putting on his glasses and trying to read the listing price through the rain-streaked window. Then the pounding started. At 6:02 a.m., I opened my front door. Dale was standing on my porch in the rain, barefoot. Pajama pants soaked from the knees down, a t-shirt already dark with water. His hair was flat against his forehead and his glasses were spotted with rain. He was shaking, not from the cold, though the July morning was cooler than it should have been. From something structural, the kind of tremor that begins in the hands and works inward until the ribs can feel it. He was holding his phone in one hand, the other hand was balled into a fist that kept opening and closing as though it was trying to hold something that was no longer there. "There is a sign in my yard," he said. His voice cracked on the word yard, as though the word itself had a fracture in it. "There is a sign in my yard, Dad," I said. "I own the house. I have owned it since 2019. The deed is recorded with Multnomah County under a trust in my name. Every property tax bill for 5 years came out of my checking account. Every insurance premium, the roof, the furnace, the plumbing, the kitchen floor, $276,000, my money, my name, my house." Dale's hand went to the doorframe. His fingers closed around the wood and his weight shifted like a man who has just felt the floor go soft. The rain was running down his arm, collecting at the elbow, and dripping onto the welcome mat in a steady rhythm. "You cannot sell our home, Corbin. You cannot do that to your mother. It is not your home. I bought it when you were 3 months from foreclosure." The bank had sent 2 notices. The third would have started proceedings. "You never asked what happened. You never asked why the letters stopped. You never asked who paid the $63,000 in back payments and penalties. You sat in your recliner and did the crossword and assumed someone had taken care of it. Somebody did. Me, the son who pushes numbers. Why are you doing this now? After 5 years? Because yesterday, in my house, at my table, your grandson walked out of a room wearing $1,850 of my son's property, and your other son said he looked better in it, because Mom told me it was just a toy. Because you sat in your chair and did not say one word. And because I pulled the numbers last night, Dad, and I found the $600. Dale's face went from wet to white, not rain white. The white of a man hearing a number he thought would stay buried, spoken aloud on a porch he cannot afford. That was just helping with expenses, he said. The whisper was barely louder than the rain. $36,000 over 5 years. You declared it as rental income on your state taxes. You listed Vaughn as a tenant at my address. My property. $0 to me. Every dollar to you. The rain kept falling. Dale kept standing there. And for the first time in my life, I saw something I had never seen on my father's face. The understanding that the person he had underestimated for 36 years was the only person left who could help him, and that person had just put a sign in the yard. Come inside, I said. You are soaking wet, and we are going to talk about every number. Before I let Dale sit down, I walked to my car in the parking lot, opened the center console, and took out the house key. Brass, plain steel ring. It had been sitting there since Saturday afternoon, the only thing I removed from my keyring that day. I put it in my pocket and went back inside. Dale was standing in my kitchen dripping onto the tile, looking at the apartment the way a man looks at a room he has never been invited into before, which he had not. The confrontation happened at my kitchen table. Dale sat across from me in a borrowed sweatshirt I pulled from my closet because his t-shirt was soaked through and the man was shivering in my kitchen chair. The same chair Eli sits in for breakfast every morning. Rainwater pooled under his bare feet and collected in a small puddle on the tile I mopped the night before. His glasses were fogged from the temperature change between the rain outside and the heat inside. He took them off, wiped them on the sweatshirt, and put them back on. His hands were still shaking. I opened the Thornhouse ledger on my laptop and turned the screen toward him. $185,000 for the purchase, $42,000 in property taxes, $18,000 in insurance, $31,000 in repairs, $276,000, Dad. That is what this family has cost me. And yesterday, in a house I paid for, at a table I replaced, under a roof I reshingled, my son's birthday present was stolen by his cousin, and the room laughed. Dale stared at the spreadsheet. His eyes moved down the rows the way eyes move when they are counting, and the count keeps getting worse. Vaughn arrived 30 minutes later. Dale had called him from my kitchen phone with shaking hands, the call lasting 14 seconds, just long enough to say 4 words, Corbin is selling the house. Vaughn drove from Fulton Street to my apartment in a truck that still had my parents' driveway gravel stuck in the tire treads. He walked into my building without buzzing, found my apartment, and pushed the unlocked door open without knocking. Because Vaughn has never encountered a boundary he considered applicable to himself. He was loud from the hallway, his voice arriving before his body did. What the hell is going on? Dad says you are selling the house. You cannot sell a house that is not yours. The deed is in my name. Has been for 5 years. The county recorder's office has it on file. You are welcome to drive there Monday morning and check. Vaughn's volume dropped by half. The air in the room had changed. He looked at Dale, who was sitting at my kitchen table in my sweatshirt with a puddle of rainwater under his bare feet. And the image itself was an answer to a question Vaughn had not known he was asking. Is this true, Dad? He owns the house? Dale did not answer. His eyes were on the laptop screen where the ledger was still open, rows of numbers scrolling past the edge of the display. While you were at it, I said, you might want to ask Dad about the $600 a month you have been paying him in rent on a house he does not own. For 5 years, Vaughn turned to Dale slowly, the way a man turns toward a sound he does not want to confirm. You told me that was the mortgage payment. You said it went to the bank. Dale's mouth opened. His lips formed the beginning of a word, but the word did not arrive. His hands were flat on the table, palms down, and they were not shaking anymore. They were still. The stillness of a man who has run out of stories. There is no mortgage, I said. I paid it off when I bought the house in 2019. The property is owned free and clear. Dad has been charging you rent on my property and keeping every dollar. $36,000. And he filed it with the state as rental income. Vaughn sat down in the chair beside Dale, as though his legs had been disconnected from the decision-making process. He looked at his father the way a man looks at a locked door when he realizes the key he has been using for 5 years was carved from a lie. Then, Vaughn tried to redirect. He stood up again, leaned forward over the table, and said what he had been saving. This is exactly your problem, Corbin. You sit at a desk pushing numbers all day and then buy a 12-year-old an $1,800 headset so he will think his dad is interesting. Jet plays sports. He has friends. Your kid sits in a room drawing pictures on a screen nobody is going to look at. You are raising a soft boy with expensive toys because you do not know how to raise one with a backbone. And you wonder why your wife left. The kitchen went still. Dale pressed his palm flat on the table. Quinn, who had come over at 6:30 with the listing paperwork and was standing by the counter, set his coffee down with both hands and did not pick it up again. I stood up. My voice was level. You called my son soft. He is 12 and he designs buildings in 3 dimensions that his art teacher calls college level. You called his headset a toy. It is the tool he uses to do work that your son has never attempted. You called me a desk worker who pushes numbers. Those numbers bought the house you sleep in, paid the taxes you never noticed, replaced the roof you stand under, and funded every repair you took credit for at family dinners. You have lived rent-free in my property for 5 years while telling people you were helping the folks out. And Dad has been charging you $600 a month and pocketing it because he knew you would never ask for a receipt. Everything about your life, Vaughn, the house, the driveway, the kitchen table where you sat yesterday while your son stole from mine, was paid for by the spreadsheet nerd you said was not interesting enough to be a father. Vaughn's hand went to the back of the chair. His fingers whitened. His jaw locked sideways and his breathing went shallow, chest barely lifting. He looked at the ledger on the screen, then at Dale, then at me. His left leg shifted backward half a step. The color drained from his face, starting at the temples. You called me soft, Vaughn. You called my son soft. And you wonder why your wife left. I returned his line without raising my voice. The difference is, my son and I live in a home I pay for. You live in one I pay for too. And I am done. Dale tried. His voice had dropped to something barely above a whisper. This is your mother's home, Corbin. She raised you in that house. You would not take that away from her. I reached into my pocket and took out the house key. Brass, plain steel ring. The key I had carried since 2019. I set it on the kitchen counter, between the coffee maker and the paper towel holder, with a click that was louder than it should have been. Mom said it was just a toy, not a house. The deed says Corbin Thorne. The sign went up at 5:30. You have 30 days. Dale stared at the key on the counter. His hand reached toward it, then stopped, the way hands stop when they realize the thing they are reaching for was never theirs. Vaughn tried one more time. I will give the headset back. Jet did not mean anything by it. This stopped being about the headset when I opened the spreadsheet. The headset was $18.50. The house was $276,000. You picked the wrong toy to call small. I looked at both of them. My father, sitting in my borrowed sweatshirt at my table, wet footprints still drying on my floor. My brother, standing with one hand on a chair he thought he owned in a conversation he thought he could win. This is the last dollar, the last tax payment, the last insurance premium, the last time my son walks into a room in this family and leaves with less than he came with. The listing is live. The vacate notice is certified. My name is on every document that matters. And every document you thought had your name on it, check again. Quinn handed Dale the certified vacate notice as they left. A white envelope with the county seal and Quinn's firm name printed at the top. Dale took it without reading it. He held it the way a man holds a verdict he already knows the content of. Vaughn did not take anything. He did not shake my hand. He did not look at Eli's drawing on the refrigerator as he passed through the kitchen, though it was right there, a pencil sketch of a building Eli had designed the week before, taped to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a protractor. He walked to his truck in my parking lot, sat behind the wheel for 2 full minutes with the engine off and the rain beating on the windshield, and then pulled out without signaling. Dale walked behind him, barefoot in the parking lot rain, carrying the vacate notice in one hand and his phone in the other, the phone that had made 4 unanswered calls to a son who had finally stopped answering. The police report for the Vision Pro was assigned to a property crimes detective who contacted Vaughn by phone the following Tuesday. The detective explained that theft of property valued above $750 in Oregon is a Class C felony, and that a report had been filed by the property owner. Vaughn said, "It was a kid messing around. It was not theft." The detective said, "The item was removed from the owner's room and not returned. The receipt shows a value of $18.50. Whether it was messing around is for the court to decide. The headset was returned to my apartment in its original box by Wednesday, delivered by Irene, who placed it on my doorstep without knocking, rang the bell once, and drove away before I opened the door. Eli found it, opened the box at the kitchen table, checked the lenses for scratches, and put it on. He was designing a building within 5 minutes. He did not ask where it had been. He already knew. The listing went active on Sunday and received 3 showing requests within the first week. 2 couples and a single buyer toured the property while Dale and Irene were still packing boxes upstairs. The realtor told Quinn that Dale sat at the kitchen table during one of the showings and did not move. The buyer's agent asked if the seller's family needed additional time. Quinn said no. The certified vacate notice was served Monday morning and gave all occupants 30 days to leave. Dale and Irene began packing the following weekend. Irene filled boxes with the organized efficiency of a woman who has been managing a household for decades and now has to decide which parts of it she is allowed to keep. Dale sat in his recliner and watched. On day 12, he finally stood up and started taking down the photographs from the hallway wall. The nail holes behind them were the only marks he had ever made on a house he did not own. Vaughn, who had been paying $600 a month to a man who pocketed it in full, loaded his truck on day 19 and moved to a studio apartment in Gresham that cost $900 a month. No co-signer, no guarantor, no brother's name on the lease. He took the boxes from the guest room, the bed frame that was scratched from 2 years of not being careful, and nothing from the kitchen because the kitchen was never his to take from. He has not asked me to guarantee anything. He has not called. Quinn told me what happened at a family barbecue at Irene's sister's house in late July. Karen and Quinn's wife had been in the same book club for 6 years, which is how Quinn and I originally met, and Karen had invited her without knowing the connection would matter. Irene's sister Karen asked Dale where they were moving. Dale said, "We are figuring it out." Karen's husband, a man named Polk, who had always believed Dale owned the Fulton Street house, said, "I thought that house was paid off. What happened?" Dale said nothing. Karen looked at Irene. Irene looked at the potato salad. Quinn's wife, who was standing near the cooler, said, "Corbin bought that house 5 years ago. He has been paying every bill since. Did nobody tell you?" The patio went quiet. Karen set down her plate. Polk looked at Dale with an expression that was recalculating 20 years of admiration in real time. Irene called me once, 3 days after the barbecue. She called at 9 in the morning, which is the time she calls when she wants to have a conversation she has been rehearsing since dawn. She said, "You could have told us you owned the house, Corbin. You could have said something at any point in 5 years. I could have. And you could have stopped your grandson from walking out of my son's room wearing his birthday present. You could have told Vaughn to give it back. You could have said one word to Dale about charging rent on a house he does not own. You had 5 years of Sunday dinners to look at your son and ask where the money was coming from. You did not look, because looking would have cost you the version of the story where Dale is the provider and I am the one who pushes numbers." She was quiet for 10 seconds. Then she said, "That was between the boys. It was between the adults who watched and laughed. Eli stood in a doorway at 12 years old and watched his family tell him he does not matter. That is why the sign is in the yard, Mom, not the headset, not the money. The look on my son's face when nobody in the room stood up for him." She hung up. She has not called again. The conversation lasted less than 3 minutes. I have had longer phone calls with my utility company. Quinn told me what Dale and Irene's last week in the house looked like. They moved to a 2-bedroom rental in Milwaukee that cost $1,400 a month, more than Dale has ever paid for housing in his life, and the deposit came from the $36,000 he collected from Vaughn, which was now the only savings he had. The Fulton Street house was empty by day 27. Quinn walked through with the realtor the morning after they left. The house was empty in the way houses are empty when 30 years of a family have been removed in 27 days. Not clean, not destroyed, just absent. The walls had nail holes where pictures used to hang, some with small chips of paint missing where the frames had been pulled too quickly. The kitchen counter had a ring from a coffee mug that had sat in the same spot for so long the stain had become part of the surface. The recliner was gone, but the carpet where it sat was a different shade than the rest of the room. Lighter, protected from years of foot traffic by the weight of a man who sat and watched, while someone else paid for the floor under him. The crossword puzzle book was in the recycling bin by the curb, its spine cracked, its pages soft from use. The garage had oil stains from Vaughn's truck and a dent in the drywall near the door where somebody had bumped it with something heavy and never repaired it, though I had paid 3 contractors over 5 years to repair everything else. And the key I had left on my kitchen counter during the confrontation was sitting on the island of the empty Fulton Street house, placed there by Dale on his way out, beside a note written on the back of a gas station receipt that said, "I did not know." 4 words on a receipt for $12 of unleaded, arriving 5 years and $276,000 too late. On a Sunday morning in late July, Eli was sitting at our kitchen table with the Vision Pro on his face. The same headset that had been taken and returned, designing something I could not see. His hands moved through the air, placing walls and windows and roof lines in a space only he could navigate. He was building a house, not the Fulton Street house, something new. Something that belonged only to him. He pulled the headset down after 20 minutes and looked at me. "Dad, can I show you something?" I walked around the table and he held the headset up for me to look through. On the screen was a house, a small one. 2 bedrooms, open kitchen, big windows. He had textured the walls, placed furniture, and added a detail I did not notice until he pointed to it, a small desk in the corner of the living room with a laptop on it and a spreadsheet on the screen. He had drawn me into his building, sitting at a desk, working on numbers. A 12-year-old boy had designed a house for his father inside a headset his grandfather's family called a toy. I handed the headset back. "That is a good house, Eli, I know," he said. And he went back to building. "The house key is in my desk drawer now, off the ring. I do not carry it anymore. For 5 years it rode beside my car key and my office key. The heaviest one on the ring, the one I could feel through my pocket when I sat down. Now the ring is lighter, the drawer is heavier, and the weight went exactly where it was supposed to." The Fulton Street house is under contract at $308,000, closing in September. The buyer is a young couple from Lake Oswego who walked through the empty rooms and saw what they could become, not what they had been. They are going to paint the kitchen a color that has no memory attached to it. They are going to plant something in the front yard where the for sale signs stood in the rain on a Sunday morning in July. They are going to make it theirs the way everyone should make a home theirs, by paying for it, by knowing whose name is on the deed, by checking. Thank you for being here. If this story reminded you that the quiet ones are not weak, they are just waiting for the right number, subscribe to Karma Unfolded and share this with someone who needs to hear it. I will see you in the next one.